Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Dr. Anthony Francoso. I am faculty in Sociology and Ethnic Studies at Pasadena City College, as well as one of the co-coordinators for CORE, the Community Overcoming Recidivism Through Education program, which serves to empower formerly incarcerated and system-impacted peoples. Before we start the event, we want to open it with a land acknowledgement. So I'm going to turn it over to one of our advocates, Laura Hayes.
Thank you, Anthony. My name is Laura. I'm one of the advocates for equity and justice for the CORE program, and I'd like to start with the land acknowledgement. Recognizing that we are on stolen land. This land on which our institution sits is physically situated in the original ancestral homelands of the Tongva people. We pay respect to the Tongva and all indigenous people, past, present, and future, and their continuing presence in the homeland and throughout their historical diaspora. We pay homage to those who were stolen from Africa, placed in bondage, falsely named as chattel, and forced into labor, who were called slaves but never submitted to such and have always been fully human, with an unbroken connection to the divine and to each other. We honor our African ancestors for the still unpaid labor, which built what is now the Americas. To both our indigenous and African forebears, we commit to the continued struggle for liberation and reparations, for it is only through freedom and justice that we truly give honor. With that acknowledgement is also an obligation to give honor through our work. I'd like to acknowledge Dr. Melina Abdullah, whose words I used today for our land acknowledgement. And I'd also like to acknowledge my colleagues who are here on this panel, my students, my family, my community. Thank you for showing up. And for all those who are listening, thank you for being a part of this.
Thank you, Laura. So we have about 45 minutes, and I don't want to take up too much time, but I do want to say a couple of things. CORE wants to thank the coordinators of the Career Community Social Justice Conference for inviting our CORE scholars to share their experiences with you all. But a note on sharing. To invite our scholars to give us a glimpse into their lives is a rather large ask. To share one's experience of being connected to the prison industrial complex can bring up a multitude of traumas, as well as an identity marked in stigma. These CORE scholars you see in front of you have put in work. They have overcome so much to be where they are today. The strength and resiliency embodied in this panel is a common thread that links all of our CORE scholars. It's important to say here, we all need to be a part of this work. We need to reflect on our own actions, how we ignore student needs, how we reopen trauma with our words and actions, and how our very institution can perpetuate the same violence on our campus that formerly incarcerated and system-impacted folks endure in their own communities. Therefore, we need to develop ways to holistically empower not only our CORE scholars, but all our students. And hopefully this forum will be a start. To the panelists, I want to say thank you. Thank you for your strength, bravery, optimism, trust, love, for being present, and for allowing us to be such a very small part of your journey. For this, I know I speak for all of our CORE advocates that we are extremely grateful and we are humbled. This will be a listening forum, meaning the only folks who will have the mic today will be our CORE scholars. If you have any questions, please direct them to the moderators, myself, or Laura Electa Hayes, and we can discuss these questions with our scholars at a later date. Today we have 5 scholars who will be sharing their testimonials with you today. First will be Phillip, then we will go to Jasmine, Greg, Cecilia, and Michael. Each scholar will share in ways that they feel are empowering to themselves. So with that, I want to turn the mic over to our scholar, Phillip.
Hello, everyone. My name is Phillip. I do identify as a formerly incarcerated student. I have been affected through the institution system and I just want to thank you guys again for letting me be here to share my story with you guys. And the only way that I feel like you can really understand is by me sharing, my experience as a formerly incarcerated student at PCC. So with that, I'll go ahead and start with my story. The first day I was released from prison, I did not have many options. You see, before I was incarcerated and sentenced to do a 16-month prison term at the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, or California State Prison Systems, um, where after experiencing emotional and mental and physical trauma in there, I was actually one of the few people to be released on February 25th of this year from North Kern State Prison. When I got out, I was still putting on, this front that everything I had witnessed in there, everything I had experienced, didn't affect me. I was just kind of acting like, you know, um, I it really didn't emotionally affect me, and it really did. I wasn't acknowledging how it really did, and because of that, even if it did affect me, I wasn't going to let that show. But deep down inside, there was still a man inside who was really scared and who was alone. And I would like to point out, on the day that I was released, I was given terms and conditions that I was to be released from prison on. The reason I say this right now is because it is important, because one of these conditions was that I am not allowed to leave the state of California for the next 10 years. So when I came out, I didn't have a place to live, and I had to be here in California for 10 years at least. And before I was incarcerated, I had planned on living in California. I had just moved from Texas. I'm originally from Texas. And so when I was released from prison, I didn't have a home to go to. I was very lucky that my aunt, who had picked me up from Delano, California, offered to let me stay with her in Upland, California, in her one-bedroom apartment with her and her fiance. Um, I'll always be thankful to her for that. Even however, sleeping on an air mattress on the floor by the kitchen table, it was not ideal. It wasn't the ideal situation, and I didn't care about me sleeping on the floor. I didn't care about that. It was just the fact that, like, my aunt had to deal with that, that she had to, that there was an air mattress in the way of her in her kitchen, and that's where I slept. Like, that bothered me. I didn't care about sleeping on the floor. So oftentimes I would ask myself, if I was better off sleeping in prison, at times. At least I had a bed to sleep on, and I was not taking up the very little space that my aunt did have. But you know what? I got to give her this. She was very supportive and always did her best not to make me feel uncomfortable. She always made me feel welcomed. But the truth is, there was nothing she could do to take away the hurt that I was feeling, and the emptiness that from all the trauma and the experiences and the things that I had seen in prison. So I hated being at home. It reminded me of prison. Very little space to move around, and no personal space. Very little to no personal space. So I had to do something for myself. My aunt Patty gave me an idea to go to Pasadena City College, where she worked as a professional expert in the Veteran Resource Center. I told her that I didn't want to go because I was just out of prison. I was fresh out of prison. I didn't know, like, if my way of thinking was normal, and I did not want to embarrass her or feel judged. Despite this, she encouraged me to go, and I did. And because I did, I enjoyed being on campus, walking around. I enjoyed going to the library, hanging out, exploring things. But one thing is, I was alone, and I still felt like I didn't have a purpose. And a lot of the experiences I had with being locked up in prison were still having a negative effect on my mental health. It felt really hard to connect with people, to interact with people. I felt like, I was a monster because of the things I had participated in, because of where I came from, and everything like that. Even though I was ready to change and I wanted to be rehabilitated, it wasn't until core faculty reached out to me that I began to find a way to begin this healing process through receiving higher education. We are all equal without equal opportunity. And what I mean by that is I began to see the positive effects that being a part of CORE was having on me, and began to wonder why there was so little funding going into our program. Why do we not have our own buildings, like the math and science buildings or the art building? What about the library, athletic halls, auto shops? They have an important significance to the culture of what they're teaching into their community. Why does PCC not have a core building with counselors who specialize in dealing with system impacted students, who students can feel comfortable with opening up to about traumatic experiences, like the ones I had while I was in prison? It's part of the healing process, right? So that we can transition back into society as a productive member and a productive citizen. And in order to do that, I ask PCC, in order to help me succeed in doing that and continuing my higher education in college and being successful, I ask for a space for CORE to have where we can have counselors working in offices, and we can go and talk to them about our educational plans. We have counselors that specialize in dealing with mental and health issues that understand our situations better. And I ask that we create more opportunities for core members to work within the school system to reach out to system impacted individuals like ourselves. And another thing is, I had mentioned that I came from Texas, and when I got out, I couldn't leave California. I didn't have a home to go to. One of my only options was going to school as far as positivity goes. And so with that being said, I was still considered an out-of-state student. And so I feel like one of the programs we should help with systemically impacted students directly, like such as myself, who are getting out of prison and don't have residency in California, we should have like a toolkit or a workshop, something that will help them become residents into California and get become an in-state resident, to be considered an in-state resident student. That would be really helpful. That would open up a lot of doors that would be a really good start as well. And so those are one of the things I asked for. And with that being said, I'm going to pass the mic to one of my other scholars that are members of the core program, and I'm so proud to be in the program with them. And that's going to be Jasmine. She's a wonderful person, and thank you guys for listening to me.
All right, thank you so much, Phillip. So I'll just take a quick moment to breathe, because I know we're all very passionate. And emotional about these things that we share. Everything that we share comes from the heart. And with that, I'll go ahead and begin with explaining how CORE has helped maintain connections and community while being a part of this program. So I'll start with being a CORE scholar has made my experience at PCC so far nothing less than remarkable. The assistance and empowerment of the advocates, coordinator, and community have inspired me to consider my education as a form of resistance. I would not be able to obtain my position in the Associated Students Board of Pasadena City College if it wasn't for them humanizing and recognizing my capacities as a system-impacted woman of color. Having my father and relatives taken away by the prison industrial complex makes me system-impacted. Having been taken of the opportunity in education at such a young age due to socioeconomic barriers makes me system-impacted. It's important to know that the trauma and adversity in the Phi-Psi community, or formerly incarcerated and system-impacted community, are defined very differently by each unique experience. I have come back to PCC after many, many years of working in the service industry to reclaim space. This space has been taken from Black, Indigenous, and other people of color, not given the care and resources needed in order to survive and be consumed by the colonial and capitalistic ways of society. The formerly incarcerated Radical Scholars team, also known as FIRST, initially provided this space for me. I learned the power of community. Learning and connecting with resilient scholars, I learned how adversity makes us stronger. Adversity gives us no choice to not only survive in academia, but to thrive in it. I can speak for myself and some of the radical scholars when I say that we are hungry for an opportunity. Most of all, we are passionate about paving the way for others while reclaiming the space. I am constantly amazed by the power of testimony and transferable skills we acquire as non-traditional students. As non-traditional students, we value the resources and opportunities PCC has established in order for us to manifest our academic dreams. Since CORE has been established, I have been empowered to not only advocate for myself, but also advocate for scholars that are seeking an opportunity to be liberated. After all, as Nelson Mandela says, and quote, "Education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world." I want to emphasize that we are all worthy of taking up spaces in higher education. The struggle that non-traditional students are currently facing is a lack of employment and leadership experiences on campus. In my experience, having individuals that believed in me when I didn't believe in myself was revolutionary to my self-esteem and bravery. I cannot emphasize enough that having people like Laura Electa Hayes and Anthony Francoso inspired me on so many levels. They unknowingly cultivated a fire inside of me that allowed me to grow as a person and a leader while embracing my petals of rebellion. I have found my passion for leadership and advocacy because of the opportunities presented to me, such as serving as a previous Underground Scholars Ambassador, being a community engagement leader, and organizing with the first board. And now with my position as VP of Student Equity, I not only want to empower students to become leaders of tomorrow, specifically from marginalized backgrounds. I would also like to cultivate these same seeds that CORE has given me by eradicating discriminatory practices, embracing our identity, and enriching our social, personal, and professional lives. As the slogan for our campaign went, "Together we will rise." And thank you for sharing the space, everyone. I'll go ahead and pass it to, I'm so sorry, Greg, thank you.
Thank you, Jasmine. Thank you, Phillip, for sharing your story with us. Hi, everyone. Buenas tardes. My name is Greg Martinez. I'm a non-traditional student, and I also identify as system impacted. So I graduated high school back in 2001, and I took a few years off and decided to come back not too long ago. But I want to share a little bit about my background and why I identify as system impacted. So growing up, I was raised by a single mother in a typical Mexican household. By typical, in my neighborhood, a single mom was pretty typical. You know, I was a little too much to ask to take care of, so I was kind of raised by my grandma. At 5 years old, I remember my dad being beat up by the sheriff's department. I remember visiting him at the hospital, and that's one of my earliest memories that I have. So I grew up in Boyle Heights, California, which is a pretty tough neighborhood. And I was lucky, I was really interested in sports, and I spent most of my time at the rec center, at the park, playing sports. And I grew up, I thought sports was gonna be my way out of my neighborhood. I thought I was gonna get a college scholarship. I was gonna get out of my neighborhood. I was gonna come back and sign autographs for all the little kids, and that was my way out. Baseball and football, man, those were my sports. And it doesn't work out that way. It doesn't. We don't always see the bigger picture. So by the time I hit 8th grade, my dad had passed away from overdose. My mom, who had been a special ed teacher, started succumbing more to her addictions. And, I went to one high school and didn't do anything. So I was lucky, and I was invited to go to a Catholic high school in my neighborhood on a sports scholarship. And I was there for 4 years, and I was trying to be the best person I could be. I tried to be student government president junior, senior year. but you know, I was really acting out. You know, I was really longing for that parental guidance. You know, and so senior year, I get kicked out of high school. Have to kind of, you know, work on my own and kind of build my own life, and I put college to the back burner. You know, I started, you know, hitting the streets and doing this and that, and then you know, I became the person who I did not want to become. I started becoming my dad. You know, I started falling into my addictions, and I started running with the wrong crowd and whatnot, you know. And fast forward to 2012, I was tired of being sick and tired, and I went to Homeboy Industries. I entered their drug program. I entered a treatment facility. I was only gonna do 60-day program. And I'm sorry, I was only gonna do a 3-month program and a 90-day program. And at the end of my 90 days, one of the counselors approached me and he spoke to me about what I wanted to do after, you know, what my goals were. You know, he asked me if I had a license, where I was gonna live, and stuff like that. And I didn't have any answers, you know. I just wanted to get in and get out. And he worked with me, you know. He wrote handwritten letters to judges. You know, I had warrants. And he really took the time, and, you know, he wrote handwritten letters to judges, and he got my license back, and he went that extra mile for me, you know. So then I decided then that I wanted to get back to school, and it just took me a long time because I didn't feel as if I really belonged in college, you know. I just felt like it wasn't for me. So in 2018, I enrolled at PCC in the fall, and I was there for about, it wasn't until the following spring that I got introduced to CORE, and one of its advocates, Jesse, who is now studying at UC Berkeley, and we spoke. You know, we had a common story, and you know, he I didn't know what system impacted was before. You know, I thought these programs were only for people that were formerly incarcerated and stuff like that, and you know, it's not. It's for everyone. You know, and it's for everyone. Sorry, it's for everyone. And you know, through meeting Professor Francoso, and everyone else, you know, Jasmine, who's been, you know, really inspiring and stuff like that. And it's asked me, you know, what else, you know, what else can be done, you know, and how can the university further support us, you know, and CORE is great and stuff like that, you know. Thank you, you know. It gives us the, you know, the equality. It kind of gives us an equal playing field, but, you know, we want more than that, you know. And what I've learned, that it's okay to ask for more, you know, that when something's not enough, it's okay to ask for more. So what we want to do, you know, we want to ask for specific counseling, you know, to help us formerly incarcerated and system impacted students, you know, helping through our everyday dramas, you know, because one bad day for a student like myself is different for a traditional student, you know. For me, a bad day could trigger my anxiety, could trigger my depression, and I could disappear, you know, for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, you know. So what we're asking for is, you know, better counseling, you know, better resources. Although we do have really good resources, you know, but we want more, you know. We want more. I think we deserve more, and that's what I'm here to do, you know. Just to a call for action to ask for more, and thank you for listening to my story. Oh, and I'll pass it over to Cecilia.
Hello, everyone. Before starting my part of this panel, I would like to thank everyone for sharing this moment of time and space with CORE, my community/support system, and myself. My name is Cecilia Elena Bachmann, and I'm in my last year at PCC, majoring in linguistics and communication studies, planning to transfer next fall. Let me start off by saying that making the step back to school was a challenge in itself already. because I felt that I don't relate with most of the student population, nor the idea of being a student, which I later learned is a sign of something called an imposter syndrome, meaning we often internalize self-doubt from years of being deemed for wrongdoings instead of our good deeds, skills, and abilities. Our past actions and way of living are already against social norms we internalize at a young age in order to function in a society and make society function as a large. So not fitting in or even being ashamed is a regular occurrence in an institutional setting like college for individuals identifying as formerly incarcerated and or system impacted. I think it is important to note that coming from a certain lifestyle or subculture, you acquire important but different set of skills. One being that you learn to be more a silent observer of your surroundings at all time. Something I did a lot when going from class to class my first year at PCC. I was not interested yet in interacting or making connection to others. When speaking about observing, most would think my main focus are classmates since they are closer to age or in the same role as me in college. But my actual focus was faculty, meaning my professor I had for my classes. Before reasoning why so, let me side note that individuals like myself always have the mentality that everything is a hustle, meaning you look for profit first. You approach life with a mentality to secure yourself with different forms of assets acquired through your hustling skills to feel stable and safe. When looking at higher education, I don't mean this in the sense of using someone to gain access to assets, but more so being guided towards assets such as who can help me to find my place at school and become a student like the people who surround me every day on campus. Also, power comes in many different forms, but I want to talk specifically about the power that professors hold. Professors have access to understanding and navigating the various resources available to students on their campus, but don't always openly share this with all the students because of the implicit biases they may not even be aware of. So with this in mind, you understand my choice of focus on professors for not just access to beneficial resources and support, but also guidance. I was searching for someone who I can disclose myself to. There were a few different examples how I looked at my professors, such as their way of teaching, language use when sensitive topics came up, or simply just their overall approach as a human being to other humans being away from power. Especially being at the start of your educational journey, you often deal with overcoming hardships resulting from trying to change your life around. So besides dealing with internal challenges, you also deal with the life and being in your new role as a student now. So my hunger for assets come in various forms, such as receiving help to access resources or even find a community in form of support programs or student organization I can identify with. Individuals like me were often a long time out of the school system, so we are not very familiar how things are done or operated on campus. With that said, support on a personal level is crucial. As said earlier, we were often given up on because of the choices we didn't want to make, but had to simply to survive in a certain lifestyle. Examples of support on a personal level are: how do I enter support programs? How do I find my place in a new community? Meaning not so much of explaining, but showing me that there could be safe spaces offered on campus for individuals like me. Because what I learned personally in my life is, nevertheless the situation you are in, having a community plus a safe space you can rely on can help immensely to overcome your challenges. I especially want to emphasize today the feeling and the need of safety, which we often lost because of our circumstances throughout life, as well as the stigma put on us in society. We often feel unseen, unheard, and muted, which leads us to not feel welcome, especially in institutional settings such as college. I'm asking you today to understand and support not just us as students with support and guidance on a personal level, but to use your power to help us get our own spaces on campus. Instead of a hidden small office which barely fits 2 people, to providing us with a resource center which has larger offices for our amazing advocates, as well as study areas or learning centers. You need to understand that the past year CORE has gone beyond and above to empower their formerly incarcerated and system-impacted students, helping many of us to have faith in their educational journey and feeling welcomed in higher education. We all still go through different life circumstances. So making campus and hopefully a CORE resource center a harbor for our FISI student community is key. Lastly, I will thank everyone for actively listening to us. And I want to motivate you when leaving this panel today to reflect on my call for providing a physical safe space on campus for the FISI community, while reflecting on your individual importance of a safe space to keep striving in your life and career. I hope this makes you understand the urgency and necessity of such for us CORE scholars. Thank you very much. And I pass it on to Michael.
Hello, my name is Michael. So I'm going to share how my experience was when I first went to PCC. And I'm supposed to be prompted with a question, but so the question I asked myself is,
I got you, Michael. You want me to ask the question? Sorry about that.
yeah,
So, Michael, the question that we wanted to ask you was this. Have you ever been treated negatively by other students or faculty because you're formerly incarcerated?
I was so used to being looked at and treated differently. It was normal for me to be singled out by the way I dressed and spoke. The mess of reality was that it felt normal to be outcasted because of the way I carried myself and where I came from. It wasn't like I walked into college fresh out of high school. I spent most of my young adult life in juvenile and adult detention centers, so I had no identity as a student. And this was made painfully obvious when I was asked to change the way I spoke by professors. This was difficult for me to do. It was like learning a new language. When I walked into classrooms, I had to become a different person. I didn't have that traditional sense of connection with the other students, and I had no sense of community. Many of my professors would point out my improper vernacular instead of asking me why it is that I spoke in such a way. They were quick to label me as that bad student. It was like I was walking into these doors already wearing a failing grade on my face. Even though this room of people had no way of knowing who I was, I felt as though I had been branded as bad cattle. I wasn't allowed to walk with the herd. Mistreatment in the field wasn't anything new to me, so I just continued to play the game. I was just here looking good for my probation officer. I didn't need to fit in or belong. How could I belong? I was a criminal, but that's what the system was defining me as. I was becoming more and more aware of how different I actually was from this discourse community. I couldn't truly share who I was with anyone. Me and my peers didn't bleed through similar veins, so I didn't feel safe to open up and display my scars for show and tell. As inhuman as I felt, I still felt that very human emotion that is embarrassment. Being that there were no advocates and I was so accustomed to being dehumanized, I just hid the embarrassment away in that dark place that housed the rest of my human emotions that I wasn't allowed the luxury of feeling. Emotions were a weakness, and I learned that I couldn't show weakness or the system would break me. When I tried to share some of my past with peers, I learned to regret it. They couldn't understand where I came from, and they were quick to no longer see me as a student. I was now a criminal in their eyes, and a criminal didn't deserve their friendship. My story was pushing people away, so I tucked it away along with the emotions and continued walking through my days, sheltered, safe, and alone. I slowly buried most of my identity that was seen as unsavory in society. I was wearing a mask that allowed me to sit in these rooms, but I never felt like I belonged, for my soul was trapped in that dark little space as well. I was becoming another cog in the machine, and my true identity was just a taboo relic sitting in the museum of my past, a museum that nobody but myself could visit. I never felt like I truly had a space until about a year ago when I got involved with CORE. And I think that community and having that safe areas was really important, and to be able to share space with people on campus. So in that area, I was able to take off my mask and stop the masquerade walking around campus. I could be myself. I didn't no longer have to act as a student. I could just be a person, a human. So I noticed that everybody comes from different walks of life, and we all meet at this community college of PCC, and everybody's at a different step in their life. But we all meet together with this common goal of getting higher education, to be liberated through education. And I think that it's just important for staff and faculty to be mindful of this. We all are different, and we all have different needs, and we all come together, but with the goal of being human and to learn and grow together. So I just think it's really important that we all just acknowledge that we are different and that we embrace our differences and love our differences and share them, and we can feel safe to share it without being labeled as something. And yeah, that's all I have. Thank you.
Awesome. I want to say thank you again to each and every one of the panelists for sharing your experience with us, for allowing us to be, all of us in this Zoom, to be a part of your journey. It takes a lot to be able to share stories, and especially when we come from communities that can be so painful. It takes a lot of bravery and a lot of resilience to be able to share the way you all did. And I am extremely proud of each and every one of you. For sharing your experiences. And yeah, I want to turn it over to Laura.
I echo with what Anthony said. You all know how I feel. If you feel like you want to turn off your camera and take a breath, or if you want to stay here, whatever you want to do is okay with me and okay with the rest of the room. We only have 3 minutes left, and I wanted to allow space for those listening to say 2 words, and those words are thank you. That's it, nothing else. But if you want to be unmuted, you can raise your hand and you can say those 2 words and those 2 words alone. Thank you.
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 Muchas
Thank you.
gracias. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Muchas gracias.
With that, we conclude our panel. Thank you all so much for being here to listen.